Hi, folks. Ken Masterson here. A reader, actually a very long time reader, sent me an interesting email yesterday morning. Um, in the United States, I got my first sinus ear infection and was put on Augmentin, which is amoxicillin, and 24 hours he was feeling better than he had for years. Continued for the whole course of treatment, and he's down to the last few days, and he really doesn't want to go back to the nasty, nasty MECFs feeling again. So he asked, "Is would it be possible to see what the antibiotic is doing to my microbiome?" The answer for the first part is yes, in general, but for his specific microbiome, when he was asking, can you do a walkthrough how to do it? Well, just as a walkthrough, he's asking. And he was speculating, could he replicate the effect of antibiotics with supplement, probiotic, or food, since his last microbiome test is over a year old? The answer for the last part is probably yes. The key is he had the microbiome before he had antibiotics, which means that we have a reference point and we can now see what the antibiotics could change and what it probably has changed, or probably the bacteria change which has caused the improvement. Again, this is all inference. If we had a microbiome test immediately after the antibiotics, as in on the very last day of taking antibiotics, before things start going back to the way they were, then we would actually get more detailed information. That's not available. I'm not going to write software to do that until somebody actually gives me information I can use to test it with. So what I'm going to do now is go and show you how I answered this question. It's now on the site. So stand by. I'm on the person's actual collection of samples. As you see, he has been doing them on and off for 4 years. He is one of the early uploaders to my site, which definitely means he gets brownie points for being a contributor to major stuff on the site and an encouragement for me to go and do it. So what we have here is we have a magic button called Antibiotics Helped. We click that and it goes over and it uses the same format as my recently added pages, which allows you to find a particular modifier, see what it modifies. So if you go down, you click over it, and that's that. So you can find more information. I've added in a radio button here, so you can pick one of these items. Okay, barley isn't it, although some readers have reported starting barley porridge caused a major improvement. So those readers may want to come back and do it again. But let's go in and type in his antibiotic. And I'm, just for illustration purposes, going to put a wildcard at the end. A wildcard means has these characters and then has whatever characters after. Sometimes you won't get exact match. Other times you actually can have spelling mistakes in how you're doing. So wildcarding sometimes can be very helpful in finding stuff. For example, okay, let's just not go down examples a moment. Let's just do the simple walkthrough. And now we have a whole bunch of different things, and these are almost all brand names. So if you click on one of them and we go and take a look at it, you'll see that it's simply a brand name for amoxicillin. So it saves you having to figure out what in the world this magic thing is. I have something like 85,000 different drug names there with what they are commonly called on scientific studies. So I'll select one of them, then I slide over here, and if this was the sample I was working, I would just click here. However, it's not a sample, and I simply go down, select the sample which I am wanting to work with, which is right here. Click it, and it will automatically go on. When we change a sample, it will change it. Buttons there if the sample you are shown is a sample you want to make use of. Okay, and now what we have here is all the bacteria which we know how the antibiotic impacts and what you have. So if we go down here, we see that the um, antibiotic impact is it will increase this particular taxa, and your count was 4,000. The medium 50% of people have 5,000. So it's a candidate for what caused the change. Everything else in the top group is a no luck. And I define candidate as something which is outside of the middle 25%. So I'm pretty slack in terms of finding candidates. And leave it to the reader to determine if it's significant. Now down below we have the decrease. In this case we have a value which is 3 times the typical value. So we mark this one. This one we don't have quite 3 times. We have a good 40% higher. Mark that one. This one is a ugly. Is that 4 times or 40 times? Well, doesn't matter. It's a huge difference. Another one which is 3 times. So I'll mark all of those and click Add to Handpicked Taxa. And if we go down, there we have the golden buttons appear. Golden buttons are golden. Okay, so if you want to see what we picked, just make sure we click here and we see everything is there. You can see that we are asking for 2 specific species, 1 genus, and 1 family. And now we can go back and if we want to know more things about it, we could just simply go and click on one of them and see what we know about it. And what we find is that um, we have practically no information about this one. We do a low association blood A type, and that's it. So we are in the area where we have no literature at all suggesting this species is in any way related to chronic fatigue syndrome. But we have inferred evidence that it could be for some people because it is probably it was a high count which probably was decreased and the symptoms improved. So it's an inference that it's related, at least for one person, not necessarily everybody. Again, be careful about overgeneralizing. We are uber specific with this site. That is, we are absolutely specific for one person's microbiome only. You cannot generalize it to all MACF people, to all IBS people, to all soluble people. That's dangerous. And you shouldn't be doing it because you have precise information, and that means you have less speculation, you have a shorter list of candidates that could help, and the candidates that could help have an actual logic behind them, and which can trace all the way back to the original studies from which the logic is based. Studies could be wrong, studies could have a ton of could not be wrong, but could not account for certain other factors. So it doesn't guarantee we have accurate results. What it means is we simply have high probability results. Okay, so let's go back to our handpicked taxa. We're going to change samples again. We go down to the handpicked taxa suggestions. The add 01 for people who want to do something like adding 0 bifidobacterium or 0 lactobacillus or 0 akkermansia to their suggestion build. You can do that. I suggest you usually wait until you have done it without adding first, because you may get some surprises when you insist on doing that. Okay, so let's click handpick taxa. We're over here. We have a handpick taxa marked here, which is exactly what. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bump that up to 10 for the moment. And I'm going to do something to convince myself that what we are doing is correct. I'm going to take away everything but two things: antibiotics and herb spices. Antibiotics means we're going to be looking at antibiotics for suggestions. These suggestions originated with antibiotics. So we would expect the antibiotic which we were given to be on the list. So this is a way to verify that the logic appears to be working, because if the list which we got came from antibiotic, then the suggestions coming back from the shifts which we are trying to adjust for should be, or should include, the antibiotic we started with. In other words, we're just verifying we have a complete cycle happening. So what we do is we click here, and we see we have licorice as number one, and we have amoxicillin sitting up there number two, which means yes, we find that the antibiotic that causes improvement is the antibiotic that goes back. Now, the probability estimate, remember here, is based on the number of studies. There's probably a lot more studies for licorice than for amoxicillin for these particular bacteria. The result is licorice has a higher rating, not because it's necessarily stronger, it's simply because it's cited more often. Most studies do not give relative rankings between an antibiotic and licorice for its impact on bacteria, which they did, they don't. So we end up substituting what I term a probability estimate, which is the estimate that it will cause an improvement, not how much of improvement. How much improvement, we just do not have the science for, we do not have the studies for. All we can do is that, okay, there's a lot of evidence suggesting that this will cause an improvement. It may cause a lot of improvement, it may cause a little improvement. All we know is it is likely to do some improvement. So, and now we go and we look down the list and we see some other one, Zifromax, which is often prescribed for MACFS. It is the second choice out of several hundred antibiotics in the database, which is sort of interesting because that implies that it also has a similar impact, which may be also why it has been successful in some reports in treating MACFS. Okay, so we have verified that the logic appears to be working all the way through, which is good, and it was how I discovered a couple of bugs yesterday, which have since been fixed and which I admitted to on my Facebook page. Okay, now let's go and get rid of antibiotics, and let's go and answer his question. Flavonoids, food seasoning, prebiotics, probiotics, sugars, vitamins, amino acids, and let's leave that. Let's skip diet style for the moment. And I'm going to do for 100 here, and I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to do some here. We are leaving things exactly with what we have direct citations for. If we include children, it won't make much difference because half of them are at species level. There are no children. We could include the parents, but we already have the parent included. So we'll be going up one level above the parent, which is the blot here, up one more. So in general, given the taxonomy rank, I would not add those in. But again, experiment. That's how we make interesting discoveries. So click that, see what we come up with. And as expected, licorice is number one, resveratrol. Polymeric acid is there. Let's go over and remember everything is hyperlinked. And we will see what it is. Okay, so you can get it as a supplement on Amazon. Okay, I'm going to just click one of them and take across. And oh, basically it's in kelp powder. Okay, that's where it's coming from. It's an ingredient in kelp. Okay, exercise, chronic fatigue syndrome and exercise do not go well together. Extra virgin olive oil, B9, aspirin. Aspirin had major impact on me during one of my episodes of ME/CFS, which is sort of interesting. And then different bacteria. So we have a good long list there. And we actually have the full list. Triphala, which is one of my favorites, is also up there. Walnuts. I have a box of walnuts at work, which I use for snack food, so I keep into it. Um, and items to stop. We find certain probiotics are suggested to be stopped. Barley, in this case, too. Slippery elm. Um, so there are a bunch of things here. Things like, for example, iron. If you have iron problems, it may not necessarily be a good thing to stop. Inulin is an interesting thing to as a avoid. Again, all these should be reviewed by your medical professional before implementing it. Just the reality is this is machine generated suggestion, all by logic, all by AI, but it totally ignores any medical conditions you have. All it does is work for the microbiome. And then we have down the bottom we have all of the hey, these are the good probiotics for you. Um, we have one which has a very high impact, so we can go over and see what's in it. And we see it has happen to have pretty much the right mixture of everything that we are really wanting to have. So it makes it sort of nice. Um, you're not having to take 15 different probiotics. You may be able to just get one particular one. This is another one which is a unusual probiotic. Um, and it again ranks very high, so you may want to consider that one too. Then we have mixed impact. Mixed impact means that some studies show it will help some of the items, other studies shows it will hurt some of them. And remember, we are dealing with mixtures here. And then we have all the ones which have negative impact, which are likely going to push you in the wrong way. Mimosis is listed there as a negative impact, and mimosis is often used by people with chronic fatigue syndrome because of its anti-inflammatory characteristics. Unfortunately, it also encourages the wrong set of bacteria. The no known impact down below, we get suggested food, flaxseed. We have here resveratrol, which is grapeseed extract. Quercetin, again, my favorite to see is caffeine, vitamin C, and etc. So we have a whole bunch of things. And again, if something is unfamiliar, go and click it, and you will see what the substance is. In this case, you see dried peppermint is what it is. So you may want to, if you can get some true peppermint candy or peppermint tea, you may want to make use of it. Again, not peppermint flavor, it's peppermint itself. So, and getting dried peppermint and making peppermint tea yourself often can be nice. It would be 100% organic, and it may be pretty strong. But so that's basically it. So that's takes us to the whole thing. You can now go back if you want to and go and do a add zero taxa to them. For example, oh, blot here. That's what we were already dealing with. And I'm going to go in and do a search for Akkermansia. I'm going to add it to my handpicked list. And we now see what the handpicked list suggestion, the taxa is. And we see we had a load Akkermansia there. So it looks like it's a viable thing. Let's go in and see what our samples change. And again, we will exclude that. We'll exclude diacetyl. And we'll just do a quick peek. And we find that because we included Akkermansia, our list of items has actually changed. These items were lower down in the list. Licorice will higher up. Licorice has impact on Akkermansia, which is why it doesn't sit at the very top. And we can go through, etc. Key thing to remember is that there is no definitive right way of picking the taxa. We don't know. What we can do is work from what we have and come up with suggestions. For example, with the same taxa, if we go over to advanced suggestions, go over to Jason's recommendations and see what he suggests. He is looking to shift a different bunch of bacteria, so it's a whole bunch of different candidates, and let's see what his suggestions would come up with. His suggestion comes up with actually contradictory things. Inulin sits high. His suggestion, so this one is in common. Um, pomegranate is in common. So we have some in common, but some things are absolutely reversed, and that is because he's not looking at explicitly a small selection of bacteria. He's looking at a multiple of things, and we have a juggling act. So it means you have a choice to make. You have to figure out how you want to approach it. This case, the handpicked taxa based on the antibiotic help would probably be the first choice for this person because that's where his main concern is. If he can keep feeling better from altering that small group of bacteria which antibiotics hit, then he'll be happy. I would suggest he try it. If it does maintain or at least lessen the relapse, then after 2 months going on this stuff, get a new microbiome and do the next round of adjustments. Okay, I think I've talked enough, and that's it. Interesting request, and to my surprise, it was actually doable with only 1 day of coding. I won't describe how much that technically would cost if I was doing it commercially, but let's say it's a nice contribution to everybody's general health and well-being. So enjoy, be healthy, get better.